They weren't afraid. They had done this before. Two skiffs cut across the dark water, engines screaming just below full throttle. The men aboard them stood loose and relaxed, weapons slung casually, eyes fixed on the horizon. Ahead of them loomed a massive silhouette that long, flat, and silent. No lights, no escort in sight, no radio warnings. To these men, that silence meant weakness. In these waters, silence usually meant a merchant ship trying not to be noticed, a crew hoping that if they didn't react, the threat would pass, a captain calculating insurance payouts instead of resistance. The pirates smiled. What they didn't know, what they couldn't see, was that every second of their approach was already being measured, logged, and analyzed, not by nervous sailors, but by a system designed to detect, classify, and eliminate threats long before they become dangerous. By the time they realized the water itself had turned hostile, the encounter was already over. The waters off the Horn of Africa are not naturally violent. They became violent because of geography. The Gulf of Aden funnels global trade through a narrow maritime corridor linking the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. Oil tankers, container ships, bulk carriers, thousands of vessels pass through every year. Where traffic is dense and state control is weak, predators adapt. Somali piracy did not begin as a criminal enterprise. It began as a survival response. For decades, foreign fishing fleets plundered Somali waters, operating illegally and without consequence. Toxic waste dumping poisoned coastlines. Local fishermen, armed with nothing but small boats, watched their livelihoods collapse. At first, resistance was defensive. Then it became transactional. Then it became professional. By the late 2000s, piracy had evolved into a system. Fast skiffs powered by multiple outboard engines, GPS units and satellite phones, AK-47s and RPG-7s sourced through black markets. Spotters ashore, tracking shipping patterns. They studied behavior. They learned that most commercial ships avoided confrontation. They learned that speed and aggression created hesitation. They learned that navies could not be everywhere at once. Most importantly, they learned that ships looked bigger and slower than they really were. That lesson worked for years until they applied it to the wrong vessel. From sea level, large ships are deceptive. At distance, details blur. Container stacks vanish into shadow. Antennas disappear against the sky. Flat decks look the same whether they carry cargo or fighter jets. To the pirates, the silhouette ahead fit a pattern they recognized. Large displacement, predictable course, no visible defensive posture, no flashing lights, no warning flares, no immediate reaction. In pirate logic, that usually meant one thing: a ship trying to pass quietly through dangerous waters, hoping not to draw attention. What they were actually seeing was a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier operating under emissions control, deliberately minimizing its electronic footprint. Silence wasn't fear. Silence was discipline. Long before the skiffs changed course toward the carrier, they were already visible. Modern naval warfare begins with detection. Radar systems aboard the carrier and its escorts continuously scan the surface. Small, fast-moving contacts appeared on displays almost immediately. Their speed, heading, and lack of identification markers raised attention without triggering alarm. At first, they were simply tracks. Then the behavior changed. The skiffs adjusted course, speed increased, one separated from the other. That mattered because intent is not judged by weapons alone. It is judged by movement. Inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, operators watched the geometry unfold. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't rush. This wasn't chaos. This was routine. Naval forces operate on escalation ladders, structured responses designed to control violence, not provoke it. At this stage, no weapons were fired. No alarm sounded across the ship. The carrier didn't alter course. Instead, the system shifted quietly. Destroyers adjusted spacing. Sensors refined focus. Helicopter crews moved to readiness. Everything remained calm on the surface. Because escalation only works if the opponent believes they still have options. An aircraft carrier is not powerful because of its size. It is powerful because it is never alone. Every carrier moves with a protective ecosystem known as a carrier strike group. Destroyers form the outer ring, scanning for surface and air threats. Submarines patrol unseen beneath the waves. Aircraft stand armed and fueled above deck. Each platform shares data. Radar returns, optical feeds, electronic emissions. No single sensor decides anything. The network does. To the pirates, the carrier looked like one ship. In reality, they were approaching a distributed weapon system stretching miles in every direction. One skiff altered course. It veered slightly away, creating separation. This was not panic, it was tactics. Split the defender's attention. Test response time, force confusion. The second skiff continued straight in. That decision crossed an invisible line, because once a small craft maintains speed and heading toward a high-value naval asset, the assumption shifts. What was uncertain becomes hostile, and hostile intent activates a different layer of response. Helicopters lifted off the carrier's deck with practiced efficiency, MH-60 Seahawks, built for maritime dominance. Within minutes, they were airborne, radar scanning wide arcs, optical systems zooming in. From above, the situation clarified instantly. Weapons were visible, posture was aggressive. One individual stood upright, holding a cylindrical object over his shoulder. An RPG launcher? At that moment, uncertainty ended. The helicopter descended deliberately, placing itself directly in the skiff's path. Rotor wash hammered the water, forcing the boat to ride hard against the waves. The door gunner rotated his weapon into view. This was not intimidation, it was communication. Then came the warning shot, a short burst into the water just ahead of the skiff's bow. Close enough to feel, far enough to avoid casualties. A clear message, delivered without words. Stop now, turn away. You still have a choice. For a brief moment, hesitation appeared. Then the skiff surged forward. That was the last decision they made freely. While the pirates focused on the helicopter, the real response came from the sea. Rigid hull inflatable boats launched from a nearby destroyer at full speed. These were not patrol boats. They were platforms carrying VBSS teams. Visit board search and seizure specialists trained for close quarters maritime combat. They moved fast. One RHIB cut off the skiff's forward arc, another closed from the rear. The helicopter hovered low, forcing the skiff into unstable water. The sea churned violently around them. The pirates were boxed in not by walls, but by physics. The moment was brief. So brief that most of the crew never noticed it. Weapons dropped, hands went up. One rifle slipped loose, clattering once against fiberglass before splashing into the open sea. There was shouting, but not the chaotic shouting of panic or fear. These were controlled, precise commands delivered calmly through loudspeakers. Short sentences, no wasted words. Within seconds, the pirates were restrained. No gunfight, no dramatic explosion, no heroic charge across the deck, just efficiency. From the aircraft carrier's deck, nothing changed. Jets continued launching. Deck crews continued signaling. Fuel hoses remained connected. Maintenance crews kept working. Operations never paused. Because to a carrier strike group, this was not a battle. It was an interruption, already resolved. As they were transferred from their skiff to a U.S. Navy destroyer, one of the pirates looked back. Only then did the scale become impossible to ignore. The helicopter hovering above, rotors slicing the air with mechanical indifference. The destroyers flanking silently, gray hulls cutting clean lines through the water. And beyond them, dominating the horizon, the aircraft carrier itself. A city of steel, a floating airbase, a warship so large it seemed unreal against the open sea. The carrier had never altered course, never slowed, never acknowledged the threat in any visible way. The pirate had believed he was chasing a cargo ship, a slow-moving target, a vulnerable vessel. What he had actually challenged was the most protected maritime asset on Earth, and by the time he realized it, the encounter was already over. To understand how this happened, how men armed with rifles and speedboats could be neutralized without a single dramatic exchange, you have to understand something fundamental about modern naval warfare. The most dangerous enemy is the one you never see. Long before the pirates launched their skiffs, they were already being tracked. Satellites observed unusual movements along the coast. Signals intelligence intercepted suspicious communications. Patterns were flagged, not as a certainty, but as a possibility. At sea, radars scanned constantly, mapping every object above the horizon. Electro-optical sensors watched the surface. Acoustic systems listened below it. Nothing moved unnoticed. The pirates believed the sea concealed them. They believed distance provided safety. But distance is no longer a protection. Not all of them surrendered. As the first skiff was boxed in and forced to comply, approached from multiple angles, helicopter hovering overhead, destroyer looming nearby, the second skiff made its move. It turned hard to starboard. Engines screamed as throttles were pushed forward. The small craft skipped violently across the surface of the sea, bouncing from wave to wave. To the men aboard, escape still seemed possible. They had speed, they had distance, and they believed the enemy was distracted. They were wrong, because while the pirates thought in terms of boats and bullets, the U.S. Navy was already operating several steps ahead. The moment the skiff turned away, its fate was sealed. Above it, the helicopter tracked every movement using stabilized optics capable of locking onto a single person from miles away. Radar systems measured speed, heading, and rate of acceleration. Fire control systems updated continuously, calculating options that would never need to be used. On nearby ships, combat information centers fused all this data into a single operational picture. The pirates were no longer just targets, they were data points. Every second of movement refined the response. Every course correction narrowed the options. This was not a pursuit, it was containment. Open water feels infinite, until it isn't. To someone unfamiliar with naval operations, the ocean seems like freedom. No roads, no barriers, no borders. But to professionals, the sea is a controlled environment. At high speed, small boats burn fuel rapidly. Engines strain beyond safe operating limits. Salt spray infiltrates machinery. Heat builds, judgment degrades. Waves that once felt manageable become obstacles. Every impact stresses the hull. Every turn risks capsizing. Naval forces understand this. They don't need to outrun you. They need to outlast you. The skiff's engines screamed as they pushed harder, spray soaking the men aboard. Hands clenched weapons slick with seawater. One of the pirates looked back, not to track pursuit, but to confirm fear. Behind them, the helicopter remained steady. Not gaining, not falling back, just there. Once again, protocol came first. The helicopter dropped lower, angling to the skiff's port side. Rotor wash slammed into the boat, destabilizing it, sending water crashing over the bow. Over loudspeakers came a command. Clear, calm, unmistakable. Stop your vessel. Throw your weapons overboard. You are being intercepted. The response was surgical. A short, controlled burst from the helicopter's mounted weapon tore into the skiff's engine block. Metal shattered. Fuel sprayed. The engine died instantly. The boat didn't explode, it didn't burn, it slowed, it yawed sideways, waves slamming into its hull as momentum. For the pirates, capture was only the beginning, because modern military operations don't end with surrender. They begin with analysis. Weapons were cataloged, serial numbers photographed, modifications noted. Below deck, specialists began pulling data. Satellite phone records linked the pirates to spotters ashore. Coordinates matched known rendezvous points. Call times aligned with previous hijacking attempts. Patterns emerged: routes, safe harbors, fuel supply chains, weapon sources. This single failed attack. Now, here's the paradox of modern power. The strongest weapons are the ones you don't need to use. The aircraft carrier never launched jets. Missiles stayed in their tubes. The main guns remained silent. And yet, dominance was absolute. Because the carrier's incidents like this travel fast. Within days, the story spread along the coast. Details changed, as stories always do. Some said the boat vanished instantly. Others claimed the helicopter never left their side. But the core truth remained. They chased a ship. The sea turned against them. They never fired a shot. Fear doesn't spread through explosions. It spreads through inevitability. For years, piracy thrived on assumptions. Those ships were slow. Those crews were passive. That navy was distant. This incident shattered those beliefs. It showed that silence does not mean weakness, that restraint does not mean vulnerability, and that power no longer announces itself loudly. It waits. There was no press conference, no dramatic footage on the evening news, just a brief naval report, buried among others, and that is exactly how modern dominance prefers it. True control doesn't need applause, it needs results. One captured pirate later spoke through an interpreter. He said they thought they were hunting a ship. He said they didn't know it was a warship. He said they didn't know anyone had seen them until the helicopter appeared. What he never understood, what he couldn't understand when there was this, they had been seen long before that, from the moment they started their engines. The ocean does not take sides, but it amplifies power. In this case, it amplified discipline, technology, and preparation, and erased arrogance in minutes. The pirates believed the sea belonged to them. That day, it reminded them otherwise. In the end, no missile flew, no ship burned. No dramatic battle unfolded. And yet, the outcome was total, because the real weapon was not steel or fire. It was a certainty. Certainly that resistance was futile. Certainly that escape was impossible. Certainty that the battlefield had already been decided. They picked the wrong enemy, and the sea made sure they understood it.